Hi, I'm Femi Okay, and you're in the stream. Today, is the sharing economy as open as it claims to be? We look at bias in the digital marketplace. Sharing economy, but how caring is it? Omar Badar is our digital producer. Lots going on online because, of course, sharing economies tend to use social media a lot.
That's right, and lots of people, we're actually hearing from a lot of people who've had personal experiences who say they've experienced discrimination in one form or another using these things. Like Ibrahim Muhammad over here, who says, I booked a room through Airbnb, what was supposed to be free in Boston, but American of Indian origin owner replies that it's not available. It sucks. No reason given, and that gave me a hint. Now, for those of you at home, whether you've had an experience like this yourself or have heard of one or have any ideas about how to make these sharing platforms better, we want to hear from you, so tweet us using the hashtag you see on the screen, AJStream.
Hi, I'm Terry Coleman. I'm a Black academic from New Orleans, and I'm in the stream.
The sharing economy was meant to make renting or buying goods and services easier for people from all backgrounds, but complaints of discrimination have made it a nightmare for some. Recently, the home sharing platform Airbnb has come under fire. Many black users of Airbnb say that they face racism when applying for a place to stay, and they've been sharing their experiences online with the hashtag Airbnb while black. The company says it wants to eliminate what it calls unconscious bias on the platform. So we're going to take a look at the legal and technical challenges that sharing economy companies like Airbnb are facing. And to help us do this, we're joined by David Robinson, co-founder at Upturn, and that's a team of technologists working with civil rights groups on policy issues. Cinta Keeling is an Airbnb super host in Washington, D.C. Zakia Myers is the co-founder of Inclusive. That's a lodging service that came about in response to racism complaints on Airbnb. And Nancy Leon, she's an associate professor of law at the University of Denver in the US state of Colorado. So good to have you here, everybody. All right, let's get straight to the point, the tricky nitty-gritty of this issue. Omar, how would you even know that discrimination is taking place? That's something that you have right there on your laptop.
It really is exactly what people online actually disagree about. So people like Luke over here says, why do hosts decline me if reviews are good and the calendar is available? Easy to decline based on race or any other factor. But Mauricio over here says, what point of view defines discrimination? I choose and discern people before opening my door. Hashtag taste, hashtag choice. So Zakia, I'll toss this to you. Somebody doesn't like you and does not want you to rent their apartment. How can you actually ever know whether it's based on race or not?
There are many different factors. If you get a no, you can't stay with me without reasoning that makes sense, most likely it's probably discrimination. Maybe they don't like your hair or the color of your skin. Unfortunately, it happens all the time. So that's what makes me say it's probably discrimination more than not.
Cinta?
But I just want to say that there have been issues with discrimination on many different sharing platforms. But in the case of Airbnb, at times it may not be that, because some of the hosts use more than one platform. And so say for example, it shows available on one listing, they may not have synced it to another website or platform, so that it could be a factor on that. But the other thing that the other thing I have to say, though, if guests suspect that they are experiencing kinds of discrimination in their interactions with hosts, I really think it's important that they report it immediately to Airbnb and flag that host and flag that listing.
Zakia.
Well, how we know it's discrimination is because I hear stories all the time, and many of my fellow travelers, what they're doing is having their white friends go in and request those same dates, and immediately they're being confirmed for it. So it's definitely discrimination, unfortunately. And complaints are being made, but as of recently, nothing was being done from Airbnb. A lot of the times their response was, well, unless it's blatant, it's not discrimination. So basically, if you're not being called the N-word or something to that effect, they can't prove that it's discrimination, and that's a problem.
And I think this
to the point of
And to the point of whether there is discrimination happening, there is actually some empirical research on this done by researchers at Harvard Business School who did, a nationwide study using names that are commonly associated with being Black as compared to names that are commonly associated with being white, and found that people with Black-sounding names have 16% more difficulty renting rooms on Airbnb. And so, while I think that Cinta is exactly right, that in any individual case it may be a little bit tricky to tell what's going on, overall, I think that there's good evidence that this is something that's happening with some regularity in the sharing economy.
David, what are you going to say?
I think that one of the things that's really highlighted by these experiences, is that Airbnb itself knows more than any of us do about what is going on its platform. I mean, they have measurements of every host and every rating and every guest. And I think that is both a challenge because they can see it and we can't. The pattern, for example, of someone turning down, let's say you have somebody who's turning down all of the people of color who apply to stay in their place. I mean,
Does that happen, David?
Well,
every single person of color, like you'd have an Airbnb host and they would actually say, every single person of color, actually, I'm booked up. Sorry.
That's just it. It may or may not. So Airbnb would know if a bad host like that were on the platform, but would we be able to see that that was their pattern and that it wasn't just one sort of excuse on one occasion? Perhaps not. And I think that's why what the company does is really important. And to their credit, they recently recruited the former head of the Washington office of the ACLU, Laura Murphy, to do what they claim will be, the CEO says will be, an overhaul of their platform with racism in mind. So
And the ACLU, for our international audience, is the American Civil Liberties Union.
Yes, which is really our leading NGO for civil liberties, and discrimination are certainly one of them. And so that's, they've been having conversations with leaders of a bunch of NGOs and different sort of community stakeholders. I think it's too soon, of course, to declare victory because we've yet to see what they're actually going to do on their platform. But because of all of the data they have, they really have some unique opportunities to make improvements here.
And I want to say, just before we go much further, because we're talking about one particular sharing economy or sharing company, and that's Airbnb. But this actually applies to a lot of different companies that actually take part in the sharing economy. But I wanted to see what Airbnb are particularly doing, as we keep mentioning them. Have a look here on my laptop, and it says here, for their anti-discrimination policy, we prohibit content that promotes discrimination, bigotry, racism, hatred, harassment or harm against any individual or group. And we did ask them to be part of this conversation, and they sent us basically, this is our policy, this is what we do, this is what you do, this is how you report, and that was their response to being part of the program. Omar, where do you want to take us next?
We were talking about how this is not exclusively an Airbnb issue, and we have people who are talking about other platforms where this kind of thing happens, including discrimination based on disability. So we have September Joy here, who says, Uber, as far as Uber is concerned, most drivers are educated and welcoming. The company is dedicating to providing exceptional service, but goes on to mention a few experiences that they've had. A few problems I've had dealing with one trip. There was a misunderstanding regarding a guide dog, and there were 2 canceled trips because of things like that. Cinta, would it be overburdening companies to say that they would have to provide some kind of non-discrimination training for everyone who applies to be a host or a driver or anything like that on these platforms? Or is this actually could be a direction that we can move in?
No, I mean, I can't speak for that particular company, but I think it's absolutely important that they consider doing background checks, these kinds of non-discrimination training. But the thing to keep in mind, all of this is a mixed bag. Like, I live in Southeast DC, majority minority community. Cabs they were refusing services to my guests, to my community. And it wasn't until car sharing services like Uber, like Lyft came in, and you saw a huge boom in business for them because they're filling a void for certain communities. I mean, it's a mixed bag, but you can't.
So that's an example of the sharing economy actually fighting racism and discrimination.
Exactly. But
there's something very particular that Uber do using technology that stops people from discriminating.
That's right.
David.
They make it automatic.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of Uber and Lyft, is you're not deciding who do you feel in the mood to give a ride to. If you're a driver, it's that they bring you right in. They tell you who your next ride will be. And actually...
And you can't see that it's me. You can't see that I'm brown.
That's
you
right.
can't see my hair. Can't see that my hair's in braids. You can't see anything about me.
I mean, I'm sure that someone with your scintillating looks would be all the more reason to hasten to that location.
Yes, I'm not sure what my Uber rating is, but I do use Uber a lot.
But I think, and it's actually the case even on some of these home sharing sites, including Airbnb, they have instant book, which is the same thing, which is you get confirmed without having this.
And they can't change their mind because they're already at your house.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think it's important. I think it's important to keep in mind the role that platform design plays in all of this. And there's still some features on Airbnb. I think that Instant Book is a great step in the right direction. I think that there are some features of the way that the platform is designed on Airbnb that contribute to the possibility of discrimination for people who are inclined to engage in discrimination. So, for example, the fact that Airbnb encourages users to use their real names, the fact that Airbnb encourages users to upload a picture of themselves. People may do these things just because we're used to kind of obeying these requests from online platforms without really realizing the potential for discrimination that can result from making that kind of information
So we have
available.
we do have people who are commenting specifically on that in our online community. We have Faye, great name by the way, who says, I have been discriminated against on Airbnb, probably due to the ability to pre-screen potential renters. And we also got a video comment from Carolyn talking about something along similar lines. Check it out.
I don't think that the platforms necessarily had any intention to be discriminatory, and I don't think the platforms themselves are discriminatory. But what it does do is it gives those vendors, the sellers, the providers, the opportunity to discriminate through the platforms, whereby more traditional business models wouldn't. So, for example, if we're looking at hotels or for ground transportation companies, they ordinarily wouldn't have self-selected in terms of who they would like to be their guests or their customers. But of course, the vendors and sellers can do that now. They can look at the profiles of the people, look at the gender, maybe even be able to glean what somebody's sexual orientation is and decide if they want to do business with them.
So Zakiya, on the one hand, if this thing does become anonymous, certainly you eliminate a large part of the discrimination that takes place. But on the other hand, letting somebody come and stay in your house, you usually want to know as much about them as you possibly can. Is there a way to bridge this gap?
Absolutely. You're able to communicate with the host, tell them why you're coming to their town, what you plan to do, who will be with you. I mean, there can be a lot of communication beforehand that will put the host at ease.
I do think, though, I mean, another piece of this, when we think about kind of the new opportunities people have to make sort of biased choices as individuals, that's one part of the issue. But I think also even the automatic systems like the ratings on car share services, for example, can be another way that discrimination, racism can creep in, because, you know, we think of it as, oh, it's just the numbers. The person has a high rating and they get to keep driving, let's say, for Uber or Lyft. But often those ratings really can reflect our interpersonal judgments as well.
All right, be explicit here. The ratings affect our personal judgment or our prejudices, so be explicit.
Right, so okay. So
go there.
All right, so Uber will kick you off the platform as a driver if you fall below a 4 out of 5 rating. The numbers make us think it's objective, it's a rating.
Yeah,
but
they're
in
a bad driver, their cab stinks. But no, it might be because what?
It might be because we're being biased.
Because they're black, or
right,
they're Asian,
absolutely.
or because they're called Mohammed.
And I don't know whether others have had this
Exactly.
experience, but I feel like when I do ride sharing, when the driver is a person of color, I sometimes have this experience where it's very clear that they're going way above and beyond to make sure that they've done everything they humanly can to get the best.
Probably because you're a very charming, elegant individual, David.
Well, hard to control for the experience of being me, but I think that the bottom line is, I think if someone's afraid of discrimination, and you see this too on the forums where there's like Uber people and these other online fora where people discuss their experience as drivers, and you see that people really do struggle with this, and in particular, drivers of color disproportionately struggle with this. And I think that speaks to the fact that we all as consumers also need to be conscious and careful and not to let those biases creep in to the extent we can.
Let me show you where Cinta lives. This is Cinta's Airbnb. She's a super host, so you're really good at what you do. But you experience a different kind of bias, and it's because of your neighborhood.
Correct.
Explain that.
Well, It often, the
I'm just going down here to describe how you describe it. I live in a new community development located in a gentrifying neighborhood east of the Anacostia River. Now, anybody who knows DC will be going, oh, east of the Anacostia River.
Right.
But, I mean, look at this. It's only, last time I checked, it was $47. Who would not want to stay there? But,
well, I often see issues about the discrimination point. Like, so for example, the people will leave reviews.
Yeah.
And maybe they're from an Asian country and the review will be in their language. I Google translate it and I've seen complaints about it's the ghetto. And then the English will say recommended. Yeah.
Yikes, okay.
So it's that way, or I've noticed that sometimes people will go negative about the neighborhood if they have
high
other
on everything else.
Huh?
But score you high on everything else.
Yeah. Location is the hardest part for me. It is.
Wow. Okay. Omar, where do you want to take us?
So we have some people who are discussing what could possibly be done to remedy these situations.
Right.
And we actually did get a video comment in from Jamila. Check it out.
Airbnb can be considered the world's largest hotel if one takes into account the number of rooms to which it has access. Or one could consider Airbnb a rental housing broker. Either way, anti-discrimination laws should apply to it and other digital matching firms in the same manner in which they apply to hotels and real estate brokers.
So Nancy, on the legal front, I mean, who would you be holding liable in a situation like this? Is it the sharing platform that's arranging this meeting, or is it the host themselves? I mean, how do you deal with this in a shared economy where somebody's just facilitating those connections?
Sure. I think this is one of the most complicated and interesting questions. And to answer your specific question, who do you hold liable? I think potentially either one. It could either be the individual who's renting out their property, or it could be the company itself. I think by and large, though, somebody who sues claiming that they were discriminated against in trying to find housing through Airbnb doesn't necessarily want to win a lawsuit against, Bob in Pittsburgh who discriminated against them in renting an apartment. Bob in Pittsburgh probably doesn't have that much money. They want to get all the way to Airbnb, which has a deeper pocket and is in a better position to compensate them for whatever discrimination they may have experienced.
And I think there's a real challenge with those laws because there's a real problem with, they were really designed for a big institution or like a big company that controls all these rooms, but also trains all its employees and has all of these controls, like we were mentioning the training before. And I think, what mechanisms work best, the goals are the same, right? Anti-discrimination is the same goal, whether it's a hotel or someone's back room, but what are the mechanisms that we need to use in order to achieve that result? How do we get there might be different.
Is it unreasonable of us to expect an Uber driver, a very small sharing economy company, to have exactly the same kind of processes in place that a big organization will have, like ramps and training and people who can speak a number of different languages and know how to deal with blind people and can speak sign language? And that's a lot to expect from a tiny little organization.
And yet it seems like being able to give them a free pass on discrimination is also the wrong answer.
Yes, yeah, wow.
You have to remember, hosts and the drivers for these different shared economies are not direct employees. They are individuals in a sense. I don't work for Airbnb and I'm acting in my own capacity. So that makes it trickier, but I still expect to know discrimination laws still apply to me in terms of what I do and how I interact with my guests.
Zakia?
Yes, I think one of the big problems and the reason why people kind of go for or go at Airbnb or Uber or whatever shared economy service is because it's the response to the act of discrimination.
Yeah.
So
see,
how are you responding?
Zakia, because when you talk about response, I think this is really important. Have a look here on my laptop. This is inclusive. So your response to the pushback you were getting on Airbnb, you weren't being able to stay where you wanted to stay, was what? What did you do? What was your response to that?
Their response to Rohan.
What's your response? You didn't just complain. You got up and did something about it. What did you do?
I got out, took action and said, I'm going to create a company that is inclusive of all, that is welcoming of all, no more hashtag Airbnb while black. It's just not enough. More needs to be done. So between Rohan, who is the founder of the company, and myself, we put a plan of action together. And now we have a great company that'll be launching in August.
All right.
So, but by launching an alternative, you know, we have a lot of people who don't see that there is that much responsibility on the main companies. People are pushing back on that, like Sam over here, who says, I think they could say all the right things, but what can they ultimately do to combat racism of their users? And Neslihan says, any kind of information about our race or ethnicity can be used against us on any given day. Why should Airbnb be any different? And kind of essentially saying that this is just part of everyday life.
Airbnb can close those accounts if they.
The question being, do they have a responsibility to, or is this just, hey,
Yes.
you know,
to close the accounts of racists? Absolutely.
Yes.
Or anyone
moral
people.
if not legal, right? Even
Yeah.
no matter whether our laws need updating or not, some of the stuff that's been going on that's on Twitter, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Being described on Twitter, it's happening on these other platforms.
And let me actually show you this. This is Brian Chesky, and he says here, have a look here at my laptop. The incident in North Carolina was disturbing. This was about an Airbnb host that used the N-word and was incredibly racist. He said, unacceptable. Racism and discrimination have no place on Airbnb. We have permanently banned this host. That is response to that tweet that Omar just shared.
He responded that way because the usage of the N-word was used, and unfortunately it has to be that blatant for Airbnb to respond. It's the subtle racism that is not being properly addressed.
I totally agree with that. It's so easy when there's something so clear, but often it's like we can't even know whether the person really had a reason to say their place was booked. But again, the platforms know more than the consumers can, and so that's where having the platform take a look at that and measure and check for that. You know, one of the things Chesky said was they're going to bring their data scientists.
He's the CEO of Airbnb, so this was no light tweet here.
From the
CEO.
top.
Yeah,
from the top, they said, we're bringing our data scientists in, and we're going to try new strategies.
Wow, okay.
And he is trying new strategies. I had a young lady reach out to me via email stating that she wanted to share her experience with me. She was denied a stay for a place she wanted to stay in. She reached out to Airbnb to say, this is discrimination. This is what happened to me. Airbnb, in turn, sent her flowers to her home, apologized, told them directly, we will help you ourselves find you a place. So things like that is already showing that Airbnb is starting to pay attention and trying to rectify.
Let me give you one more story. And this comes from your neighborhood centre, where you use a sharing platform called Instacart.
Yes.
Tell us that story very quickly.
Instacart is a grocery delivering service. It serves from area grocery stores, and they came a couple years ago to the area serving Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And when you went and entered, or I went and entered my zip code, they had excluded Ward 7 and 8, so east of the Anacostia River, but
because.
Well, it was east of the Anacostia River, they didn't say, but the community took to emailing them, social media, complaining that they too were a part of Washington, and then within, I think it was like a week's time,
So the responsiveness for the shared economy, it's like it doesn't take that long, perhaps, to change the culture. See something, say something, maybe something gets done.
Well,
that's right, compared to passing a new law. I mean,
that's faster, isn't it?
Airbnb can change things overnight. That's one of the reasons it's so exciting to see them try and do stuff.
Yeah, interesting.
I think that there's responsiveness when Airbnb perceives that the public has found out about something that actually makes it look bad. You know, I think that some of the issues that we raise in this conversation.
Isn't that the basis of most law, though, isn't it? You look bad, we change the law. That's how life works.
Yes, I think that's right. I think when companies get out ahead of the law, like when they do something that the law may or may not require them to do yet,
that's impressive.
It's usually for an economic reason. It's usually because the company is worried about looking bad and losing business.
Okay,
and
so
things
Nancy
like
Leon
that.
and Zakiya Myers and David Robinson and Cinta Keeling, so much to talk about. And we're going to do it in our post show at stream.aljazeera.com. Omar?
I'll leave you with one more personal experience. Gabriel here on our online community says, my requests were turned down immediately by 2 white hosts when I wanted to travel to New York City in April.
All right, to be continued at stream.aljazeera.com. Thanks for watching this edition of The Stream. Hopefully you'll be able to watch us online. See you soon. Take care, everybody. Hello there, welcome to our online post show. We're discussing the challenges of addressing discrimination in the sharing economy. I want to get right back to it. I want to flip the script a little bit and talk about best practices and advice from our guests and also from you as well. Hashtag AJStream if you want to share that. I do use Uber way too much. Have a look here. This is what I tweeted out earlier this year. And I screen saved it because I was so impressed. When your Uber DC driver is deaf, you get a heads up. Best ride for ages, thanks Benzo. So this is Benzo here, and this is what I got on my phone to tell me that my driver was deaf and that he's going to do turn-by-turn directions. And it was one way where I'm thinking, actually, maybe the shared economy is ahead of traditional economies. David?
That's exactly right. There definitely are opportunities here for us to do better. And I think in terms of showing people information that they might not otherwise have, for example, you didn't just find your driver was deaf, you also immediately knew, okay, they have turn-by-turn directions, they're ready to do this. It really created a context for you to feel comfortable.
And didn't give me an option to go, no, I won't have this driver. It's like, no, it was great. It was so great.
But I bet you felt great about saying yes after that.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. It gives you a heads up, and I really, really liked it. Let's talk best practices. Nancy, I know you as a associate law professor, I mean, you're thinking law. How do we bring the law into what we have in terms of the shared economy right now?
Yeah, I think the thing to remember about these laws is that most of them were drafted in the 1960s and 1970s, so they're very old. They were written at a time when people didn't contemplate the internet and all of the potential there. And I think one of the things that is important to do to bring these laws up to date is to make it so that they can address issues such as implicit bias that can really show up on the internet and the types of interactions people have over the internet that may not happen so much in real life, or that may be harder to prove in real life.
But you know, when we look at how platforms work online, take Facebook. They want to keep us reading our Facebook feed. So they have algorithms that they're constantly tweaking. How many videos, how many pictures, how many things from your friends versus from news outlets are you seeing? Always they're adjusting to see what can bring people's attention where they want it, which is on their feed. I think those same methods could be applied to find the discrimination that's happening, that is it's not all the platforms' fault, it's all of us and the reality of the world we live in that the discrimination is there.
The information is there, why are we not using it? Is it too scary to know how biased we really are?
Well, I think it's a different goal, and if you're running a business that's trying to sell advertising, you're going to focus on selling the most ads, and I think what's happening now is there's a bit of a sea change where the public, partly through social media, is sort of stepping up to say, you know, business goals are important, but we also have other important goals, and we should be using these powerful new platforms also to pursue, you know, those social objectives.
Now, speaking of this data and how it could be used, we have somebody with a personal experience, Juanan over here, who says Airbnb has to check on each host's guest list. We are told that an all-Asian guest list does not equal discrimination. We were told that all the rooms available in some property in Australia were gone, but then we saw that they actually were not. Contacted Airbnb and they said that they saw no issue and that the host basically had the right to deny whoever they wanted to deny. I'm a Pacific Islander speaking personally. And I mean, just on the suggestion of monitoring these trends and who's hosting who, can you imagine a scenario in which people would be basically kicked off of Airbnb because of having a pattern of hosting a particular kind of people, even though complaints did not come up? You know, would that be going too far, or do you need to wait for complaints to arrive first?
It's hard to
No.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't think it would be going too far. I think if you can look at a host and see that everyone that they're hosting is of a certain background, they should be kicked off the platform. People should be included, everyone, handicapped, white, black, Asian, Muslim. These biases have to go. I want to share a story of a pilot who booked through Airbnb. Everything was going well. He did not have his profile picture up. He had a picture of his airplane. And when he arrived at the home, the lady was very uncomfortable, very shocked that there was this tall black man at her door. She did show him through the house, even though it was a bit uncomfortable. And when it was all said and done, she said to him directly, "Sir, I'm sorry, I am not comfortable with you staying in my home tonight." And he had to go and find another place. Airbnb responded by saying she had the right to do that. that's a problem.
Let's talk best
And I think
practices.
that's why
Let's just
need-
talk best practices, because we see all of these stories, we see the hashtags, we follow the stories. I want to hear best practices. I think that's where we push forward.
So,
Cinta, I know that you advise people about
Friends.
either friends, how to be either a good host or how to be actually a good guest. How to be a good host.
Well, I also talk with them more about
Because we're almost out of time here.
when they're new to Airbnb.
Let's cut to it.
One of the things I do suggest is that they put more in their profile about themselves, their
Yeah.
hobbies, their interests.
Why?
Because people don't. I really am against not putting a picture up. And when I see that, I reach out to the guests and I tell them I need you to put it up because I need to see you. I'm living in the space.
Yeah.
And I need to know who's coming, who's showing up.
And
the
your
door.
picture is right there.
Yeah.
I see your picture right here.
So I tell them that if you put up your interest, then people will relate to you. Maybe they'll share your interests. I get a lot of people that have my common hobbies. I have a lot of people that like the fact that I work for the federal government.
So
and they come into
don't,
my
because
home.
some people have done that whole thing where, and this is what the Harvard study said, is that if you change the name from an African American name to a non-African American name, then it's different in terms of what the uptake is as an Airbnb guest. So they've seen that. So you're saying don't hide. Don't hide your ethnicity.
And I think another thing here, just overall in
not
terms of best
realistic.
practices, is clarity, right? So there's all this discussion about which of these laws apply, and we're not sure, and what people ought to do. And I think we all have a sense of fairness around what people ought to do, but I think there is an opportunity for Airbnb to say, look, every city, every town might have its different rules, but here's what we expect at a minimum to be on our platform. And they've done a bit of that, but I think they could do more. And certainly some of these experiences show us that they could be doing more to make it clear to hosts exactly what is allowed and what's not.
All right, so telling hosts
Yes.
the rules, okay, that's helpful. Zakia?
Also, to say that best practice is to include your picture and to talk about yourself, unfortunately, it has been shown time and time again that that's not best practice. We have to go on these platforms and shorten our ethnic names, such as mine, Zakia. My name on all of the platforms is Z, to make people more at ease. Unfortunately, the pilot that I was talking about put a picture of his plane up because it was not in his best interest to have his picture up as a Black man. And so that is why my company, Inclusive, we're here to say you can put your picture up, you can have your full name, you can wear your hijab, you can be in a picture with your wheelchair. It's okay, and you will be accepted. And it's not, unfortunately, right at this moment, that is not best practice to do on many of these sites.
Right.
Is to be yourself.
You can hear the debate still going on, even about best practices in this conversation. It's been a real pleasure having you here. I feel that we're still in this sort of learning curve. It's like, where are we and how do we manage this? If you had a company that was your favorite sharing economy company, what would it be, David?
Oh, I mean, I think that Airbnb is a contender depending on what they do. They've got a chance to redeem
Depending.
themselves.
Dot,
That's
dot,
what I'd like to say.
Superhost,
Deserving judge.
Airbnb, Cinta,
Yeah,
who's your favorite
I'm-
sharing economy company?
It has to be Airbnb because in my instances, it's bringing a lot of economic activity east of the Anacostia River, which is a great community. We have national parks, we have museums, and we have actual locals and not transplants. And they've opened up and brought in businesses and people that just haven't otherwise would not have come across the river.
Nancy, your favorite company, sharing economy company?
You know, I'm a fan of the sharing economy in general. I use Uber and I use Airbnb, even though I am critical of some of the things that they do. And I just think that there's a lot of potential here and that they raise new issues that need to be addressed.
All right. Zakia, if you don't say your own, I'm going to be shocked. I've got it here, right here on my laptop. Coming to you in August, inclusive.com.
And yes, inclusive.com,
Right.
favorite company. Please, if you'd like to be a host, sign up via email. Also, Lyft. I love Lyft.
Yeah. Interesting. And Lyft has
And I love couch surfing.
Yeah.
Although there's a lot of bias there, it's
Yeah.
a great site as well.
Lyft is great. I mean, one of the great things there is that they make it easy to tip, and I think that's really,
Yes.
you know, you can
Yikes.
do more as a rider.
Yeah. I'm a terrible tipper, but that's a whole different program. Omar, where do you want to leave us?
Sure, I'll leave you with this thought from our online community. It's really a question that I find sad, and it's just a reminder that this is not a question that anybody should be asking, but we have Flock over here who tweeted at Airbnb saying, Do you know of any hosts in the Henderson, Nevada area that accepts black guests for an entire home? Certainly, I think all of us agree that we should live in a world where nobody has to ask a question like this.
All right. It's a work in progress. Thank you to David and to Cinta and Zakia and Nancy for being part of our program today. And thank you for watching. Take care, everybody. See you next time.